What is up, listeners of the Didn't Ask podcast? Welcome back to episode 42 of the Didn't Ask podcast. We're not even 10 seconds in, and I've said the name of the podcast twice. So that's a good start of today's episode. How are you guys doing? I hope you had a good time during the Christmas festivities. Easy for me to say. I had a pretty good Christmas. Spent Christmas Day. So it's a funny thing because here in the Netherlands, we separate the days. Okay, so we have Christmas, but we separate them into the days. So you have the first day of Christmas and the second day of Christmas. In other countries, you just have Christmas on the 25th, and then you have Boxing Day on the 26th, or you just celebrate the 24th or 5th or whatever. But yeah, so the first day of Christmas, so Christmas Day, I spent at my grandparents on my mother's side, and we had some fun, ate some food. It was a good time. The second day, or Boxing Day, if you want to call it that, I was home alone basically. So woke up, did the Christmas breakfast type thing with my mom and her boyfriend and my little niece who slept over, which was super fun. It was, like waking up, and then when they left, I was basically home alone for the rest of the day, which is fantastic for me. I'm very much an introvert, so I like to be alone sometimes, and especially after the busy day that Christmas itself was. It's time for me to recharge, and then luckily, Monday we had a day off in the office, so that also helped tremendously because it was just for me an extra day to catch up on sleep that I've been missing for the couple of weeks. And again, re energize and to start the week full of energy. And this Friday is, of course, is New Year's Eve. That day I'm also off. So I only have to work like 3 days this week, and that's fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to, again, enjoying the long weekend and see what life brings us in 2022. So again, I hope you had a good Christmas. I hope you celebrated. I hope you got the gifts you wanted, because that's also an important part of Christmas. So that being said, let's jump into the first question of today, coming from user Link's Other Uncle. And they ask, what video game consumed your life upon first playthrough? And I can answer this question with a couple of games, actually. Like the game that enthralled me so much that I've spent days playing it is, of course, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Witcher was something that I've heard of in the past but never really got into. I've said it on this podcast before. I'm not really into the fantasy stuff. I tried Skyrim before and I just didn't like that at all. And, I've tried some other things that fit into the same type of game and subject matter. The high fantasy, Elder Scrolls, Lord of the Rings type game, like type subject. I've tried a lot of them, never really worked for me. So when I saw The Witcher 3, and everybody was speaking very highly of The Witcher 3 in the game's coverage leading up to launch, I was just like, you know what? This might be the game that gets me hooked on real RPGs, and especially high fantasy RPGs. So I pre-ordered the game, which you should never do, but I did anyways. And the game came out in 2015, which was the year I graduated high school. So I graduated high school the 30th of June, I think. And I believe The Witcher came out like the 25th or the 26th, somewhere around like the last week of June. So it was a perfect crossing of me finishing my final exams and then going into this extended period off because my college wasn't starting until September 1st, I believe it was, somewhere around that time. So I had like 3 months that I could just spend on doing nothing really. So what I did was I played The Witcher for that time, and man, I had such an amazing time, and I've been playing days and days and exploring the world, doing all the question marks that are across the map, and you name it. I had such an amazing time with The Witcher. So that is definitely one of the games that consumed my entire life. Especially, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm very much an introvert. So I am not really much that person that has to go out or needs to go clubbing or something like that. I like to stay inside, stay warm, play a game, and just enjoy myself being alone. But The Witcher is pretty much like a game that's very long ago. So to go to a more recent game that I really enjoyed and really consumed my life was The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 1 is such a special game, and it did so many things differently at the time when it came out. It really made it feel like you were in a movie, and we always say that, like, oh, this makes you feel like you're in a movie, yada yada. But The Last of Us really did that, and it explored some themes that we hadn't seen before, like, identity and what it means to be alive and stuff like that. That when they announced The Last of Us Part 2, people were a bit skeptical, me included, because of course you're influenced by the voices of others as well. And it was such a fantastic game that I cannot speak highly of enough. The Last of Us Part 2 again did so many fantastic things about speaking about love and morality and what it means to get revenge and the endless cycle of revenge, really. So that game, when it came out, it sucked me in. Like, I was lost for like 2 days just playing through the game as basically as quickly as I could, and not as quickly as in a bad sense, like, oh, like I need to get through with this game so I can shove it off. No, 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 no. I wanted to get through as quickly as possible because the game was so good, or the game is so good, that I just couldn't stop, and I just wanted to play more and more and more and more and more. So yeah, going back to the question asked by Link's other uncle, what video game consumed your entire life upon first playthrough? And I would have to say it's either, I mean, it's both really. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and The Last of Us Part 2. Both of these games were so special in what they delivered that I had to play through them as quickly as I could because I was just enjoying myself so much that there wasn't a way for me to stop. So thank you for your question, Link's other uncle. Moving on to the second question of today. This one coming from user Konami Ajani. And they ask, what sequel is way better than the original? So the name Konami Ajani makes me think of games, of course, but I'm just going to see this whole question as a overall entertainment wise. So I would say the Toy Story movies are way better than the original, is the sequels. Toy Story 1 is a special movie, but there are some hits and misses in that movie. But when you finally reach Toy Story 3, Toy Story 3 is life changing, in my opinion. That movie is so good that years later, I bought a Lotso plushie because the movie is, again, life changing. It's such a special way to interpret the story that they started in Toy Story 1, just the toys being alive, and then adding life in that and growing up and splitting away from each other and going apart and stuff like that all get spoken about and get touched in this movie. So I would have to say Toy Story 3. If we're speaking of games, then yeah, I would say The Witcher 3, even though I've never played The Witcher 1, but I feel like The Witcher 3 is like the best game out of all the Witcher games. So those are my two answers to you. I'm gonna keep it a little short for this one. But my answer to you, Konami Ajani, what sequel is way better than the original? And I would say Toy Story 3, way better than the original, and then The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, way better than the original. So those are two, different media types, I guess, that have a better sequel than its predecessor. Now, moving on to the third question of today, and this one coming from user Down Bad with a lot of these. What do you think of the anti-work movement? So, the anti-work movement, I can interpret it as different things. I feel like we are in a point in our lives, especially because of the pandemic, where we are starting to value our time in a different manner, and we are valuing our life in a different manner than we used to do. We had this live to work mentality. So you would work 40, if not more, hours a week so that you can provide money and food on the table of your family. But we are hitting a point now where we have more of a work to live mentality where people work 3, 4 days a week and then, enjoy themselves the other days that they have left. And I personally am more of a person that loves that, where I like to, like, the work that I'm doing, I don't necessarily mind. But in all honesty, I would like to do anything else in my life. And if that is not you, that is not you. But I feel like it's weird to say that if you have a new game that you would rather go to work than play that new game. So the anti-work movement, I feel like we are getting into a very interesting point where we are now saying that because people work from home now, I feel like we have had more, there is like a little bit more room in what you do on a day-to-day basis, because if you're in an office, you're in the office and so you're working or not, but like there's very little movement you can do. But there's very little leeway in that. But now when you're working from home, there is an easier transition where you can be like, oh, I'm gonna be working from 9 to 11 and then have a small break so I can vacuum my house or whatever, and then be done so I don't have to do that, after work or stuff like that. And I feel like that's a very good thing to do. And we are also seeing this happen in multiple countries and multiple companies that they are implementing 4-day work weeks. So instead of working Monday to Friday, people work Monday through Thursday or Tuesday to Friday or whatever, so that people get more days off every week. And we are seeing that that is actually helping people, because instead of slaving away for 5 days, sitting behind their desk for 8 hours every day, they're now doing that for 4 days, which means that all the work that they're doing is being truncated into 4 days instead of, dragged over to 5 days, which means that people are more active during their daily work hours because there is just overall less time for them. But it also means that they are happier and they are more rested because they now have 3 days. And I also feel like it would make people happier because you only have to work 4 days. And I feel like when you do that, like I already mentioned, you're truncating your work into 4 days. So I feel like you're getting more work done every day, or at least you are feeling that, because instead of sitting in front of your desk for 8 hours, where you, let's say, you work for 6 hours, so to speak, like you actually do work for 6 hours, and then over the whole day you work for like 2 or maybe 3 even hours that you're just sitting there. You're basically cutting that time down because again, you're basically missing 8 hours at the beginning or the end of the week. So by ratio, you're actually doing more on a daily basis. In theory, of course, because if people the same mentality, then again you would do the same amount of work. But I feel like it's a very interesting way of looking at how work hours should be dispersed, because again, it's no use for people to sit at a desk for 8 hours if they only do 5 hours of work. So at that point, it might be better to say, okay, we're gonna say that we're doing 4 day work weeks. And then instead of people not working for 3 hours, maybe they don't work for 1 hour every day, which means that overall, even though you're losing a day, overall you're getting more out of your workers. And again, people will be happier because they feel like they actually did more on their daily basis. And again, they have longer weekends, so they are better rested. So I feel like the anti-work movement is a good thing because it is not only looking at the health of the the workers, but it's also taking into account that people have lives and want to do different things in their off time and want to do more things in their off time. And I feel like overall, it is a better movement because, again, by shortening the work week, I feel like you get more work done on the days you do work. And working from home also helps with people like cutting down on travel time and again having more time at home, which not it doesn't work for everybody, but for a lot of people it does really help to get their mental, I don't necessarily want to say mental health, but maybe mental state, make that a little bit easier because instead of spending an hour in the car every morning, you now just you now have the ability to have breakfast with your kids or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like overall the anti-work movement is actually a good thing and could only help us in the end. So thank you for your question, down bad. Moving on to the fourth question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today. This one coming from user Asian underscore tiger underscore 9916. And they ask, when you hear India, what comes to your mind? And I know that you're thinking he's gonna say something about the country, but I'm not. Because when I saw this question and read the India part, I was thinking of the WWE. And then you think like, what does this fucking, that's maybe weird. Like there are some Indian people there, but no, I'm not talking about Indian people. I'm talking about the Shield. Because if you know wrestling, you know that there was this group called the Shield, which were three guys that formed this, again, protective faction, if you will, called the Shield. But every time they came to the ring, you get your theme music. And in their theme music, you heard them spell out the Shield in like Navy call out signs or whatever the fuck you want to call it. So at the beginning of the song, you heard Sierra Hotel India Echo Lima Delta the Shield, and then their music would start. So when I saw India, I was thinking like Sierra Hotel India Echo Lima Delta the Shield, and that was what I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking about Indian food. I wasn't thinking about Fixed Star. I wasn't thinking about the Great Kali or whatever. I was thinking about the Shield simply because they had the Sierra Hotel India Echo Lima Delta Shield intro to their team music. So thank you for your question, Asian underscore tiger underscore 9916. Moving on to the final question of the Ask Reddit subreddit for today. This one coming from user Jason Eicht. And they ask, what is something that most people learn only after it's too late? One of these things, and I was thinking about this because of the weather that we have had lately, it's been very slippery. And this is a completely different way of looking at this question. I'm sorry. But It being slippery is something you always learn after it's already too late. A couple of years ago, I went to school on my bike and it was dark out. So I jumped on my bike, turned on my lights, whatever you do. And I started biking towards school. And I thought, there's not going to be any issue. I'm just going to ride my bike. I'm going to be a little careful because it was a little frosty, but I thought it was totally fine. And then I reached the end of the fucking street. I tried to turn and I slipped full on. I smacked my head on the fucking ground and my bike fell upside down and you name it. Luckily, there was this very nice woman that came up and helped me. Oh no, she didn't. She yelled from the side of the fucking road saying, "Be careful, it's slippery." And I'm just like, "Woman, thanks for saying that, but I'm already on the fucking floor. What the fuck you want me to do now? Cannot fucking watch out because it's slippery. I'm already fucking down." And that is one of the things that I was thinking about when I saw this question asked by user Jason Eicht, because it's something you'll always learn afterwards. You always start sliding and then you just like, oh fuck, and then you get in a fender bender or you fall off your bike or something like that. So that would be my answer to the question. I am looking here as well. And one of these things says zombie dash organic says take care of your mental health. And that is also one of those things that you always find out later that somebody has been struggling with mental health and ended their life. And it's one of those things where it's super sad. And if you would have said that earlier, maybe people could have helped. And this is always the important thing that, yeah, take care of your mental health. Take some days off if you feel like it, because it's really important that you have good mental health. Because when you don't, there are some bad ramifications from that. Not only your physical health can go down, but it's also just like, yeah, you can end up in very dangerous situations where you're hurting yourself and by that hurting others. So please take care of your mental health and don't wait till it's too late. Thank you, Jason Eicht, for your question. Thank you, Zombie Organic, for your answer as well. And now, moving on to the final question of today. And this one, of course, coming from the MID Asshole subreddit, asked by user ideal-mind 3099. And they ask, am I the asshole for telling my new coworker it was misleading of him to be wearing his wedding band when he is a widower? Hi, a couple of weeks ago, we had a new employee hired at our company. He's a good guy and a widower named James, 36. And to my knowledge, his late wife passed away 8 months ago. Me, 32-year-old female, and the other co-workers got along well with him. However, I noticed that he's still wearing his wedding band on his finger. It kind of confused me a bit, and I couldn't help but bring it up to him while on lunch break. We talked, and I pointed out that he was being misleading by still wearing his wedding band when he's a widower. He looked quite bothered by what I said, but I tried to explain that I think that he was giving people the wrong idea or impression about his relationship status, since he's technically single and on his own right now. Don't want to sound cruel, but I'm speaking from a technical angle. James said he didn't give it much thought, meaning he don't care what people think, and that even if he wasn't wearing his wedding band and some women approached him, he'd still turn them down, since he's obviously not interested. For some reason, things got awkward and everyone stopped eating and just stared at James and me. I told him I don't know, but that really, really felt generally misleading of him, as in making people think he is in a relationship, married, when he is not, regardless of how he felt about being in a relationship. He got upset called me rude and said that I repeatedly disrespected his marriage and his late wife's memory with what I said, then took his stuff and walked away. My coworkers said regardless of who is in the right or wrong, though some said he overreacted, there was no reason for me to bring this up in the first place and cause a scene and make James upset with us, like now he's not speaking to me, and others who sided. Am I the asshole? Did I overstep or did he overreact? This was just a conversation we were casually having with the other coworkers, and I didn't use any insensitive tones or anything, but we had a discussion and it suddenly turned into an argument. I tried to let things calm down, but the situation got out of hand unexpectedly. So, this was a pretty long story, but I feel like it does sketch a very good painting that you're saying that you didn't use any insensitive tones, but life is not necessarily about insensitive tones, it's about the words you use as well. So, you saying that it is misleading that he is wearing a wedding band or his ring is already steering the question into a certain place. You could have asked, like, hey, why are you still wearing your wedding ring? Or, like, I feel like, honestly, you could have first off asked the question better because by telling him, isn't it misleading that you're still wearing your wedding band? That already again sounds leading. So asking why he still wears his wedding band could be maybe a better question. But on the other hand, it doesn't really matter to you unless you're interested in him. Why he's wearing the wedding band? He's saying himself, like he is not interested in women right now. So maybe him wearing the wedding band just shows other people that hey, he is occupied, and that doesn't matter what his relationship status is, being a widower, but like it still means that he is somehow or somewhat connected to his wife. And again, his wife passed away 8 months ago. Like it's not years, it's 8 months. So maybe you need to have a little bit more compassion, original poster, with the way you approach him and talk to him about that. Because 8 months is still pretty fresh, especially if it's your wife. Like if it was, again, not making differences here, but like if it was your girlfriend of a month that passed away, it would be hard, but assumably a little easier because you've been together for a month. It being his wife that passed away means that they have been together for most likely at least 3, maybe even 4 years, if not more than that. Maybe they were high school loves and got married later on in life. Like there are so many things that are wrong with this situation. Is that first off, I don't really think that there is a need for you to ask this question unless you're interested in him. Second off, if you really want to ask this question, you should ask the question in a more open question type way. It's like by asking him like, why are you still wearing your wedding band? Seems to be a more like questioning question instead of using the assumably more leading question that you pointed out, and that was saying that isn't it misleading that you're still wearing your wedding band? Like by asking him like why are you wearing your wedding band, he could like answer by saying like, oh man, I still love my wife and I can never take off this wedding band because of it, or something like that. Or maybe maybe he is over his wife's death but still feels occupied by her thoughts and by her love, that he wants to wear the band so he can feel connected with his wife, or at least not be bothered by other people making a move on him. So if I look out at this overall question as by ideal-mind 3099, am I the asshole for telling my new coworker it was misleading of him to be wearing his wedding band when he's a widower, I would say, yeah, you're the asshole. Because first off, it has nothing to do with you, so why the fuck do you even care if this person is wearing a wedding band? Second, the way you're asking a question is a leading question, and that already puts people in a certain corner. So I would say, yeah, you are the asshole. Like, why do you care? What does it mean to you that he's wearing a wedding band? It's been 8 months since his wife is dead. He probably hasn't gotten over it and is still dealing with the fallout of his wife's death. So I would say, yeah, you're the asshole for asking this question. Let the guy be, who he is. Let him enjoy himself if he can. And apologize, please. Because he didn't do. Maybe he overreacted in a sense that doesn't talk to you anymore, but I feel like you really hurt him by asking this question. So please apologize to him. But thank you again, ideal-mind 3099, for your question. And this has been it for the Didn't Ask podcast for this week, episode 42. If you want to ask me a question, please go to anchor.fm/didn't-ask-pod. Over here, you can find a button that says message, and you can record a voice message for me so I can listen to it and play it on this very show. If you don't want your voice to be heard, I can completely understand that. Just say it up front and I will read your question out myself so I can still answer your question live on air. On this anchor.fm website, you can also find links to your favorite podcast platforms so you can listen to this podcast wherever you go. That link will be in the show description, as well as a link to my Tracked page. And if you don't know Tracked is a very fun website that basically keeps an overview of all the shows and movies that you have watched and are currently watching. So please visit that link so you can see what I'm watching and join into the fun with me. Finally, in the show description, you will find a link to my YouTube page of the Didn't Ask podcast. Please go like and subscribe on there because that would help me tremendously. Well, this was all for me for this week. I hope to see you back next week. Please be safe at New Year's Eve with fireworks if you're doing those, because I need you back next week. Until then, Happy New Year. Goodbye.